4:01, and we'd like to get started. We're still missing a few people, but we do record these, as I was telling David, David, I'll get it right sometime, that we record these, and we have all of them for the past year. And it's a fascinating look at recreation from a variety of viewpoints. And we'll use all of these tapes and discussions and for formulating our recommendations for this large Ohio River plan, hopefully by the end of March, somewhere in that period. So over this next 6 months, we're going to take your wisdom and see how we might apply to the rest of the Ohio River Basin. I have a schedule up on our piece here, and we're just going to start off with local river events and introductions of who's online. And then we'll go into the main meat of today's discussion, really looking at funding strategies and what Pennsylvania has done and what we might learn from that. And then depending on time, we're going to go on through some of the project updates. There's some very interesting work going on the vacant blockhouses. And then the River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program deserves a little bit of discussion. Harry and I met with the director of the National Park Service River Trails and Conservation Assistance Program via Zoom from DC, and it's neat. And then this Army Corps Recreation Gap Analysis, and then finally a discussion around the Ohio River Recreation Plan, what that might mean for us. And then depending on the time, we have our committee updates. Risa might be joining us late, and if so, she has a discussion around the GIS piece. And then at the end, we're going to put Harry on to liven up the conversation and discussion, and to sort of give us an update on the congressional briefing that he held several weeks ago. And then this orbit update I put down on September 15th, and it really goes for 4 days. And so the recreation piece is on September 15th. And then we'll have a short discussion around the Ohio River Conference at Thomas More, my fault. And then finally, just as in case if people aren't online for the whole time, September 28th, we have a fascinating discussion on the lakes managed by the Army Corps of Engineers. And they have 17 lakes that they conduct recreation on. They have about a $5 million budget, and they have recently completed a needs assessment for all of their recreation facilities on the lakes that they manage. And they've also completed an economic impact study. And so that's sort of the 28th. Are there any additions to the agenda, or do we just jump right into it? Well, welcome. We're going to start off down here on the bottom of my screen, and just as a way of introducing ourselves to David, if you could just say who you are and where you're from, and just any interesting river events that have been going on in your community or will be going on. So we're going to call on Brad Collette first.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, Brad Collette, Associate Professor, University of Tennessee, with the Tennessee Riverline Initiative. One of the things that we've been focusing on this summer is programming for our Tennessee River communities. In May, we had a launch event which marked the pivot of the Riverline from research to programming and public infrastructure investment. And since that day, we've had 14 separate paddle events on the Tennessee River around the region, some hosted by our team and others by our community partners. And that's provided river experiences for more than 400 people in total. So that's been a big part of what we've been focusing on this summer.
Thank you very much. It set the bar high for Bridget. Who are you?
I'm Bridget Taylor. I work for Sanko. I'm an environmental scientist. So I collect water quality samples and run the bi-monthly program. I just did Paddle Fest, I think, a few weekends ago. So we paddled 9 miles and there was very little flow. So I actually had to work pretty hard for it. So yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
David Rudder.
Sorry, I had to get there to unmute myself. I'm David Rudder. I'm a senior planner with the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments, and been working on the Ohio River Recreation Trail digital guide. We manage that and been doing some updates to that hopefully will improve its use. It's really disappointing to be trying to show off the digital guide and the AIS location stuff and have that not work. So
The events, David, coming up?
There's the Ohio River Swim this weekend here in Cincinnati. So they're expecting about 150 people to swim across the river and swim back.
Another fundraiser for Adventure Crew. Perry Thomas.
Hi all, I'm Perry with the Division of Water. I'm based in Frankfurt, serve as the Salt River Basin Coordinator. Some of you may know I'm also an adjunct faculty member with the Wendell Berry Farming Program of Sterling College that's based in Henry County, Kentucky, in the Kentucky River Basin. And this week I was fortunate to paddle with students on the Elkhorn. That was yesterday. And on Friday, we're going for a stream walk on the Berry Farm, the Wendell Berry Farming Program farm.
Sounds great. How about John?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes. Okay, great. Hi everyone. I'm an architect and instructor at the University of Cincinnati, here in Cincinnati. Happy to be here helping kind of look into some old lock house sites and try to imagine what their future uses could be. So glad to be with you all.
How about Trish?
Hi, I am Trish Housen from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, outdoor recreation enthusiast and on the river recreationally. After several pirate games every year, they set off fireworks and they've been excellent this year. We've watched from the water. Unfortunately, it's a better show outside the stadium than it is inside the stadium, but that's what we're living with these days.
How about Patrick Connors?
Hi, this is my first meeting with the group here. I met with David over the phone just to sort of gauge my interest in the group, but I just was hired as the executive director for the Quaker Valley Council of Governments. So that group represents 15 towns just outside the city of Pittsburgh. Most of those towns do touch the Ohio River. So I thought this group would be an interesting opportunity to see the opportunities for our communities to further engage the communities in outdoor recreation on the river.
Well, welcome, Patrick. And maybe at some time you could get with David Rudder because you're both in the similar business of regional government and how they support recreation. Let's see, Victor Elam.
Hi, I didn't catch I tuned in late. I didn't catch the question. I think it's.
Who are you, Victor? Who are you? That's the question.
Okay. I am the refuge manager at Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge.
And we also said any event, do you have a paddle event, a recreation event that you've done recently or will do?
No, there's a group here at Marietta, Ohio that's I'm looking to get involved with. They're going to be doing a paddle down the Muskingum down to the Ohio. It's coming up a little bit later this summer. Look forward to getting involved with that.
Just as a slight plug for Vic and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Islands in the Ohio River. My wife and I happened to be the first people to complete the kayak challenge that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has on the islands and the river. And you just have to visit not everyone, 20 of the islands, starting up there near Pittsburgh, and take a selfie in front of it and check out the river. And so it was a fun thing for me and my wife to do. It was a pleasant way to experience the Upper Ohio. I miss anybody else? And then we'll let David and Richard do the rest here. Anyway,
Hi, Harry.
This is Harry. I'll let
Harry,
you-
Harry, I'm looking right at you. Sorry, Harry.
That's okay. So
How are you, Harry?
I chair the Ohio River Basin Alliance, and just a couple of weeks ago, in my spare time, I volunteer at Cedar Creek State Park as a Ohio Certified Volunteer Naturalist, and we put on a free camp out on the beach for the meteor shower weekend, and had probably about 1,000 people there. I loaned my tent out and gave some folks their first camping experience, and so that was fun.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm David Wicks from Louisville and chair of this august group. And two interesting deals we're doing is we're halfway through a large exhibit at the Kentucky State Fair that will have about 500,000 visitors to the fair. Now, not all of them will come through our booth, but it features the Ohio River and sort of a historical and artistic as well as scientific approach. We're right next to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers booth, right next to the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, right next to the Kentucky Division of Forestry. And our booth, I just want to say, is the best out of all of them. It's the most interactive and the most community supported. It has about 10 different organizations that are actively supporting it. And we have a big reception Thursday night. If anybody wants to drive on down to Louisville and check out our exhibit at the State Fair, and at the same time have a hamburger between two crusted donuts and other State Fair food that is examples of it. But it was just an interesting time. And then the other one is that we have upcoming Labor Day, where we're going through Mayor's Hike, Bike, and Paddle, Mayor Fisher here in Louisville. We have about 12,000 people go bicycling and hiking and canoeing. And for our canoeing trip, we'll go through the McAlpin Lock and take out at a brand new ramp called Shawnee Park Boat Ramp in the middle of the West End in Louisville. And we hope we've had about 1,400 people lock through at one time. So we're the top in North America, but not the world yet. But we hope to have the largest lock through at some time coming down the road. So that's what we're doing now, but it's a great pleasure for me to introduce Richard Harrison, who's going to introduce our guest. And just, a little bit about Richard. He is the classic bureaucrat who likes the outdoors. So he's efficient, he's effective, and he really likes the river. So it's a pleasure to work with him. He's an interdisciplinary guy, so he, is just as interested in the fish as he is in the standards, and as he's a committed person. So it's a pleasure to work with Richard and to have Richard introduce Commissioner Wardell and the conversation that we're going to have around funding.
Thank you, sir. And I'm glad you didn't say I should be committed, which I've been told as well. So I am Executive Director of Orsenco. I have the privilege of working with Bridget and working for Commissioner Woodwell, one of my 30 or so great bosses. And Orsenco, we're very interested. Bridget's volunteering. She has a GIS expertise that I've been very impressed with. And so she volunteers and is really interested in this effort. Just real quickly, a couple fun things. One fun, one I think is fun, but debatable. I did about a month ago, took my first ever catfish guide on the Ohio River. Took my grandson and my brother and my two boys, and we went catfish fishing out of Cincinnati on the Ohio River, and it was an experience. I'm doing it again in October. My grandson caught his 2 personal best catfish. He's 7 years old, so he probably has more ahead of him. We're having a day of volunteerism with the Thomas More University, and on September 14th, my Covington Rotary Club and Orsanco are working on 3 or 4 Ohio River mini sweep sites. I find those interesting. It's pretty cool to get folks out on the river. So we're going to have a number of students, maybe as many as 100, participate in that multi-organizational event next month. But without further ado, it is really a pleasure to introduce Commissioner David Woodwell. David has been with, he is the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. He's been there, gosh, probably going on 3 decades. Really interesting organization. David is someone I call from time to time for counsel. And as we were talking about river trails and funding, David has worked on some collaborations in, I believe, Pittsburgh, West Virginia, and Ohio. Also within Pittsburgh, they do a lot of water trails, walking trails, probably biking trails, GIS, storybook work. I've been to his office a couple times and seen his work. I wish I could. I'll take the pressure off of David. You're not going to hear any silver bullet here, where folks are just waiting to give us millions of dollars. But I think he can share some strategies that he has seen. It's a grind. It's a grind. But without further ado, I'll turn it over to David. I think he has a few slides for us.
Yep.
David, if we could share slides, and I will turn it over to you, David, sir.
Thank you, Richard. And one clarification, I'm not here as a commissioner of Orsanco because Richard will not be burdened with anything that I say or be responsible for it. But thanks for that. David, one quick question. Timing, what would you like? Because you've got a very full agenda on there too.
How about a half an hour for presentation and discussion?
You got it. I will slow down. That is very nice. So thanks for that introduction, Richard. Pennsylvania Environmental Council, we're a statewide nonprofit. We've been around for 51 years. Offices Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, State College, Wilkes-Barre, and a whole lot of time on the Turnpike into Harrisburg to work on policy issues. Staff of about 30. And the major areas we work in are, we're going sort of retro with a new strategic plan, just saying air, land, and water. The air right now is focused primarily on energy and climate issues. We've been very involved with unconventional shale gas development in Pennsylvania, not calling for moratorium or saying don't do it, just saying do it the best that you can for all kinds of variety of reasons. Doing a lot with methane, with getting Pennsylvania to join the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and do a cap and trade program, as well as developing a clean energy standard for Pennsylvania to get us to basically net zero by 2050. So all kinds of pieces wrapped up in there with all kinds of partners, including oil and gas companies, national environmental groups, local groups. And when everybody's mad at us, we figure we've done a good job on that. Our land work is a ton of work on trails and outdoor recreation, basically thinking that that is the gateway drug to get people to care about the resources and become stewards of the environment and issues, whether it's abandoned mine drainage, whether it is brownfield redevelopment, or the climate work. And so it's a way for us to do that. We are in the Philadelphia region, the Pennsylvania co-chairs for something called the Circuit Trails, which is about 875 miles of trail network in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, pulling all kinds of things together. Lots and lots of groups, lots of projects. We do a lot of technical assistance as well as focusing on a couple of projects there. One of our claims to fame, I guess, in that is that a few years ago, we wrote a $35 million Tiger grant on behalf of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. They got 25 million of it. We were kind of happy with that to go into the trail development. And then in Western Pennsylvania, we pulled together 10 years ago something that's now called the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, which is a whole lot of groups, state agencies, and MPOs and others working on trails that total about 1,600 miles in Eastern Ohio, Northern West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania and a touch of New York, trying to make connections between Parkersburg, Morgantown, Pittsburgh, Erie, Cleveland, Ashtabula, and my personal favorite is trying to figure out how to get to Buffalo in the near future. But that's been a process of bringing together all kinds of groups over years. Lots of GIS work, development of planning tools for trail work and management. And it's taken us also into areas of things like trail towns work, where it's how do you get the benefits of these trails to those communities, to let them recognize them, let them see the value. There's not all just folks with spandex, or in the case of water trails, Royal X or Kevlar popping by. We're also now working nationally. We convened a group that's known as the Collaboration of Regional Trail Initiatives, of large regional trail and greenway groups from everywhere from Portland to St. Louis, Charlotte, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Detroit, Chicago, Austin, Miami, to really share the issues that come up on these large trail and greenway projects. Not just how wide should your trail be, or what do you use for your base, but issues around diversity, equity, inclusion, issues around working with the railroads or not being able to work with the railroads, and really keep convening that. We're sort of in our 4th year of that work, which has been fascinating to do. We also, under the land piece, work on conservation landscapes in Pennsylvania, the Poconos, the Laurel Highlands, really looking at how you take the public lands in those areas and leverage them for sort of the economic vitality, the community values that can be had outside the boundaries, working with agencies to think outside and work with others in the communities. That's been going on for about 15 years. Department of Conservation and Natural Resources is the real lead on that. We're an external partner with them. And that's work that's been continuing and really has had great impacts in some places. And we continue to do that work. We're also working on reforesting legacy mine lands. We got 200,000 trees in the ground this year for that. And really trying to look at these lands that there are about 1 million acres of in Appalachia, and keep that legacy going, so we reclaim them for habitat, for water quality, and other pieces. We also work in the water world on a lot of stormwater issues, especially in southeastern Pennsylvania. A lot with MS4 communities and what they can do to really meet their obligations, afford their obligations, and move forward. We also have a subsidiary of the Pennsylvania Organization of Watersheds and Rivers, which runs a River of the Year program, Sojourn program, both germane to this conversation, as well as serves as sort of an association for the watershed groups. We've offered insurance programs and convenings on all kinds of issues, as well as statewide conferences. That's the sort of the quick overview of all that other stuff. But we also have, I'm gonna try to share here, work that we have been doing for a number of years. And hopefully you can see, who knows what you're seeing now. Are you guys seeing the water trail thing? Water Trail Partnership?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
We're good.
All right. See if this works. Now, I'm not Frank McGuire. I saved this with another version without Frank's name on it. But one of the reasons you're getting me doing this presentation is Lizzie Hessick, who was running this program, has left us earlier this year to go to Montreal to get a PhD in planning, which we fully support her on. And she had been running this up until now, and we're in the process of getting somebody else to start it right now. If we get to the next slide. So water trails, this is what we've sort of said about these for a long time, is that it's really, unlike the land trail work we do, where you've got to go in and get a lot of property control, work with municipalities, look at the engineering, the design, what's your cost per mile? Do you have bridges? Do you have tunnels? Are there culverts? How do you design them sustainably? The water trails have actually been here all along. And what do we do with them? And so some of this is, this idea that the water trails are out there, and they're another opportunity for folks to get out and recreate, connect with the resources. And it may be in a downtown area. It may be in a very rural area. It may be, slack water behind a dam. It may be, in some cases in Western Pennsylvania, sort of world-class whitewater rivers. And we have to figure out how you keep people on that. But there are all these other opportunities with the water trails that you get to take on. And so in Pennsylvania for the last, at least since about 2000, we've signed officially in 2008. So, but since about 2005 or so, we've been working with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, NPS, and us to sort of manage this program overall. And the interests here are the Fish and Boat Commission has responsibility in Pennsylvania for boating access, for boating registration in Pennsylvania. You do have to buy registration for your kayak, for your paddleboard, maybe even for your rubber ducky, I'm not sure. If you use a Fish and Boat Commission or a PA DCNR launch point, except on Lake Erie. And DCNR has 2.5 million acres of land in Pennsylvania. 2.1 or 2 million acres of that is state forest, 300,000-ish of state park. And so they have a whole lot in a state that's got 84,000 miles of rivers and streams. The National Park Service, we've been happy to work with. And all of these parties have sort of been in and out of this process over the last number of years. And you can see here the Water Trail Partnership goals. This is really the overall piece of why we're doing this. And you see in here also the SCORP, the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan. Pennsylvania, and I think many states, spends a whole lot of time on making sure they get it right, and really making the resources in Pennsylvania accessible to many others. And the idea of accessibility is going to come up more importantly later as we talk about sort of what the future of the water trail program is in Pennsylvania. But the number two becomes really important as well. Those are sort of the big pieces that come out of this. So in this partnership, and I may have said 2008, but so the water trail program started in '98 and really sort of got going with PFBC thinking about it, and folks were in and out. 2003, we got involved, and then the mission of the 2008 was really the formalizing the relationship. I've got a paddle in another office here with everybody who signed it on that day, and that was really trying to move forward with and you'll see some of these goals down as we go forward. But the real early goal was we wanted 2,000 miles. Why 2,000 miles? I have no memory of why we picked that number of designated water trail in Pennsylvania. But that was our goal, and we got there in 2013. And following the likes of Maine and other states that were doing pieces. And then this is from our most recent sort of strategic plan that supposedly runs out next year, and we'll be working on a new one. But looking at the principles about partnership, stewardship, the education, the vitality, all these things that really you get to a number of different ways, but water trails offer you one of the ways to get to these, to achieve these principles. Currently, we've got 27 water trails over 2,000 miles and different managers. And managers can be municipalities, they can be watershed groups, they can be water trail groups. But we've been able to put these places in, and this was really a chase for mileage for the big projects and the big pieces. And we achieved that. And the question is one of the questions coming up is that really what we should be doing going forward? But to get there, the designation process has always been the sponsor initiates it. And then they have to do a feasibility study. Does a water trail make sense there? What's it connect? What are the access points like? Do you have the resources? What's it connect? And we go through the application approval process. And I've got some maps and guides here to sort of show you what that looks like. And then the ongoing management. What do you do once you've got the water trail? How do you figure out what to do with new access points or the existing access points to either improve your access, or at least make sure it's still there and working? signage, and signage becomes a big issue when you're dealing with agencies like PennDOT and you want to put a sign on a bridge saying that there's what you're crossing or where you are. And it's very hard in many cases to get there. Marketing materials have always been a question for this. How do you let people know about the program? But then we've also gone out and asked, and this was really about 5 years ago was the last of this that we did in a big way. And we'll be doing this again probably next year. But for the most pressing issues for the water trail managers, you see them down here, and the second from the bottom, accessing funds for infrastructure, obviously a big thing, as are the invasive species, in a lot of cases knotweed, and then the not enough outfitters there are some of the big ones, but a lot of different issues and pressing issues for folks. But see, overuse does not come up as a big one for everybody. There are some for whom that's an issue, but it really comes back to how do you maintain the sites and how do you get people out there? And I think that's what the outfitters go to. And obviously the volunteers for cleanup and maintenance and maintaining the public access points are there as well. So the future of the partnership is really, what we're moving from this idea of trail development to sustainable management, and also this piece access closer to more Pennsylvanians, and the too much use. I'm not sure that everywhere that is a piece of it, but it is something there. So we've also put together now the one question is anybody seeing the Pennsylvania Water Trails website at this point? And I can't see anybody. Did the Water Trails thing pop up or not?
No.
Okay, let me stop share for a second. I'm gonna go back and share this. All right, here we go. All right, so this is the website we've got for the Water Trails program. And not saying that we are the best or anything along those lines, but this is really, this is not a marketing piece for sort of how you use it. It's more a look at for the managers to come and really look at resources around there. So that's really the network we've got right now. See the manager resources, whether it's programming, infrastructure, maintenance, and then for today's discussion, funding, with some of the different ways we do this. And a lot of this has been, as Richard sort of foreshadowed, catch as catch can. We manage a Water Trails mini grant program in the state that uses DCNR money that then the groups match. We have generally around 15,000 a year for that the groups come in and look for, and they work a year. It's not a lot of money, but it's there. Fish and Boat Commission has the boating facility grant program that they have that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, because we've changed that actually in the last month or so. And then resources for funding ideas, not for funding from the National Water Trail System. And then Western Pennsylvania Conservancy has a canoe access development fund that's a smaller one, up to 4,000 per site. So it's not big dollars in this, but these are, again, this site will let you see pieces about the Water Trails program. The strategic plan from 2017 that ends next year is not only referenced in here, but it's also available. So different pieces for how you do the work. And one of the benefits, before I forget it, is that usually each of the water trails early on did a map. And so we get a map that one side is really the information and safety information that we've worked on with Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, and then other side, depending, the maps all look different. Map on the other side. They've been very popular in some places, but also hard to get out in others. So marketing is a big question. So what we're getting to now, I think, is more of the question of access and the quality of access and the quality of the management of the water trails going forward. Starting this fall, we have a new grant program that we put together with support from the Richard King Mellon Foundation and the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission with money from their boating facilities grants program, where we will be making available through a mini grants program somewhere between $300,000 and $450,000 for this year for new non-motorized access or ramped up non-motorized access in the Ohio Basin in Pennsylvania. We're working out the kinks right now to figure out what the details are, what types of projects it works for. It definitely works for municipalities, for watershed groups, and most likely the grants will be of about $20,000 or so. And difference between land trails and the water trails is really that level of funding that's needed, where you could need $500,000 a mile potentially, or $100,000 a mile for a land trail. With a water trail, figuring out where you're going, if you have control of the land at an access point, if you've got landowner permission, you may not need ramps. It's not the same as doing a motorized access point. It's much more economical to be able to put these in, and then you think about signage and the other pieces. But what has happened for this is that we've really looked at how you scrape money together is really what it's been. It's been water trail by water trail, no big funding program. But also, I think that's kept people somewhat scrappy and hungry. But we do need to now focus more on where some of those access points are, and they may not all be on water trails. It's a debate, and then we'll hopefully move to the Susquehanna next with this program. But overall, we see people who are committed. Questions of how much area can a manager actually handle. We've got about 60% of those managers have really good engagement, others with us, others not as much. And how do you really manage this with an executive committee and other parts? So that's sort of an overview of where things are, somewhat scattered, but the whole program always has been somewhat scattered. We've almost done it in a couple of times. It's been a question of, do you keep going? We have not figured out properly how you market it, how you really get it out there. I think if you're talking about one trail along the Ohio River, that's a lot easier to, I would hope, to sort of market and get people excited about and tie it all together. But I'm gonna stop rambling there for a minute and see any questions, concerns, thoughts.
David, one thing you shared with me, I was asking you, hey, is there some, can we get Vic $10 million from Congress to Fish and Wildlife, and then all the money goes out to the trail systems, or can we is there the parks? And you said, well, really it comes down, as I recall, it comes down to interactions with your states, and this is really something that is between the states and the folks that do the trails. Could you maybe just, I'm sure I botched that, but
no, that's fine. I think right now is a wacky time for funding coming out of DC. And I was talking with some folks in DC this morning, and still unclear what's going to come out with all the different funds and infrastructure and recovery and all kinds of things, what will come out. Recreation is getting a lot of attention now. I think even some pieces coming out through Department of Commerce looking at outdoor recreation, where there's going to be about 500 million going to the states, that there are opportunities to apply for, plus 250 million being opened up for sort of nonprofits and others to look at some recreational infrastructure and workforce development, all kinds of other things that we're scratching the surface of at Tech right now, to figure out what we'd be looking at potentially for that. It's going to be, I think that money's going to go fairly quickly. But we have not seen a lot of ability, and it may be because we just don't know what we're doing too, to get a big tranche of federal money. Our water trails have also been, if you remember looking at that map, they're distinct and they're separate. I mean, there are 3 along the Allegheny River, a few on the Mon, different sections of trail linking together with different managers. The potential, if you've got a feasibility study or something that goes along and says, hey, here's what we've got for an entire length of the Ohio River with an idea of what access points look like and everything else. Could you get something? You probably could if you can find the right federal partner. Ours has much more been trying to shake the money loose, and with not a whole lot of resources from the state being willing to go there. Fish and Boat Commission for a while was very much there, then they dropped out for a while. Now they're back in a big way. DCNR has been in there all along. And the water trail groups also, because Pennsylvania has a pretty robust grant program through the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, can go in and through the boating facilities grants, pick and choose as they're ready, go in and take advantage of those grant opportunities. Just because we only have the 15,000 a year from that one program doesn't mean there's not more money. Now that will probably change, I would think, with our work with the Fish and Boat Commission, is if you have a non-motorized project in Western Pennsylvania, they are going to steer you to the money that they've given us to work with, and that we've matched with private money, and that we're trying to match with some more state money. But it really has been for us all about the state stuff, because the numbers we're talking about aren't even, they're rounding errors on rounding errors on rounding errors at the federal level in some ways. So getting the interest there is kind of complicated unless you can put a whole thing together, which you guys might be able to do. Put something really big together that's an undertaking. But I think you don't know until you try. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a quick question and open up the floor to other folks. How about basin-wide implications? Is it really all driven by the state, or is it basin, is there any feasibility of working as a collaboration of states to enhance some of this recreation, not only on the Ohio River, but its tributaries as well?
We've tried some of that with the Captain John Smith Trail, which comes up the Chesapeake and into Pennsylvania. And we worked with some folks to get the Pennsylvania portion, and this was a decade plus ago, part of the Pennsylvania portion designated as part of that recreational trail. It didn't come with money. But I do think just because we haven't done something that's a basin-wide piece or worked on that doesn't mean you should try it. You shouldn't put together something. If you've got a 200-mile water trail, 300-mile water trail, and it's and you know what the pieces are, but I think you need to be able to show where the access points are. Think about and they don't have to be fancy. Some of these are 2-car places where you've got an easement on a farmer's field who says, come on in, and you can show you've got control, and you put some signage in. You may upgrade the parking a little bit for a few spots and put it in. But that's either a very small project you can focus on, or it's a small project that's part of a bigger thing. And one of the ways we've done this recently is with the Appalachian Regional Commission, where we did a feasibility. This is on Land Trail, Erie to Pittsburgh and PA Wilds Loop are two, hundreds of miles of trail, and with some gaps remaining. It's about 60% built. And we were able to do a gap analysis of what was missing over the course of about a year, and then go back to with a county as the applicant and partner to get implementation money from the Appalachian Regional Commission for about $1.5 million under their power program, which is replacing jobs in communities hit hard by loss of the coal industry. And that's one where it's looking at a whole big piece. You're making the story about connections. And I think that's, for us, been very important for land trails and water trails, is if you talk about the bigger connections and you're able to talk about how it brings this all together, it's a better story than talking about one access point. But I do think the basin-wide or main stem focused or however, showing connectivity could be a very cool thing.
I wanted to open it up. Perry Thomas is chair of our crew. Do you have any comments, Perry, or really anyone else? Go ahead, Perry.
I just want to thank you, David. That's really, really interesting. And you've hit on several points that our Funding Water Trails Committee gleaned when we did a review of the state SCORPs earlier in the year. We have our work cut out for us clearly, but the last thing that you said really sparked my interest, was make the story about the connections. It seems to me that that might be our starting point for making a case for funding. If we can make the story about the connections among water trails across the states in the basin.
And an example, the value of that, it's another land trail version, but through the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, we were one of the counties in northeastern Ohio, may have been Ashtabula, was they did not have they weren't funding their parks. And they went in, and after we formed the trails, and after we went in with the Industrial Heartland Trail Coalition, they were able to show this vision of connectivity. And at that point, the county said, we get it now. We understand you're not talking about just this, that you're talking about connecting us to all these other folks. And that has a whole lot of values, of other values unto itself. We will start funding this. And they put in their, I think it was a head tax, a bed tax, but yeah, that was a number of years ago. But it changed the mind because you were able to do a different narrative around it.
David, we have Brad Collette on who leads the Tennessee River line, and I know he and I have had conversations. You know, like it seems like if we could envision, you know, some of the major tributaries of the Ohio, like the Tennessee, just as Perry was saying, some kind of big picture connectivity, get the states engaged, you know, the funders. I mean, it's a huge task, but anyway, I certainly appreciate you coming and speaking with us because I couldn't have articulated what you said.
Well, yeah, there are people in fact who know this better than I do, but you got stuck with me, so I apologize. But
Brad, any comments from Tennessee? Or you have all the money you need, really, from TVA?
No, not quite. We're always looking for more to take the next step. I was intrigued, obviously, by a lot of the work that you're doing and the scale and the collaborations that you're building as well. We're also, by the nature of the path of the river, working across 4 different states: Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi. And so the challenge is real, right? In terms of, you know, with the monies going through the states, at least, you know, we're looking and studying opportunities through the ARPA program. Everybody has their own priorities, right? And so to get all those states to say, yeah, this is something that with our limited number of asks, we're going to put that forward. That's a challenge for sure. Yeah. I was intrigued though by your success with the Tiger program, and wonder if you see, obviously with, you know, transportation innovation, I don't expect that there's a connection through a program like that for water trails as well, or are you seeing that shift too?
Not for water trails. We haven't with water trails as much. Even making the case for land trails, where we think we've got a stronger argument, frankly, is tough. I mean, making those cases and getting in, but some of this also, I mean, as much as we talk about the big ones, it's also talking with municipalities, getting them just to say, hey, do you want access for your people to come down and do this? I mean, to have them look at how many, this summer, the number of kayak racks and kayaks on cars that I've been seeing is just, I think as Guy Fieri would say, it's off the hook or something, but it's like, yeah, it's the boom in that, and what has happened, I think is a case even to make to municipalities. You guys may have much better luck, and I hope you do, with the federal pitch. We really haven't gotten there for this one. It's really been the state pitches.
No, there's so many things we could talk through, and we're almost out of time.
Yep. Yep.
You know, this whole discussion around the states that are having licenses and not. I know Ohio has one, Pennsylvania has one, Kentucky does not. And so thinking about that funding stream is very important. You know, I was on a call with Risa Shimoda, who just joined us on a funding strategy. And there's folks out in maybe Kansas City that is looking at a fee on buying kayaks. When you buy a kayak, you buy a canoe rack, it's built in, just like when you're buying ammunition. And is that a funding stream that's possible? So, you know, I think as we try to figure out those long-term funding streams, so we're not grant to grant, is the ticket. Does Vic, you were going to mention something?
Yeah, well, I was just going to put in a pitch for that Federal Lands Access Program that I use to get kayak launches here in West Virginia. I would suggest that you keep an eye out for that funding opportunity coming to Pennsylvania. And it rolls around like every third year. And basically, if you have a river that could provide access to federal property, like some of that Park Service or Forest Service land, or my islands. I got 2 islands in Pennsylvania.
You do.
The ones in those areas, we can work with the local communities, the towns, to maybe put in kayak launches in those areas. Anywhere within your state would work as long as it would provide access to federal land. And that's that's through federal highways. Yeah, you just got to keep an eye on them, see when the opportunity's there, and then find you a federal partner to work with to go after that funding.
Fantastic.
Bruce, do you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, just on that particular point, I'm up at Lake Erie right now. I'm standing next to a kayak ramp. If you can see it right over here, put in by Federal Fish and Wildlife. And there are 2 of them within a quarter of a mile into this marsh area, going out into Lake Erie here, you see. And so, so it's actually part of the refuge program in the country. So my question is, if you had experience in Pennsylvania getting funding from U.S. Fish and Wildlife for access points?
I think some people down around the John Hines Refuge in Philly may have, but otherwise, no. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so impressed with what you're doing.
Thanks.
Well, it's really a comprehensive approach. It really is the ecological restoration is built in with recreation, and so it's a comprehensive approach. Is there anything else? You know, I can stay online till midnight tonight, so but some people get tired of Zooms after an hour.
David,
comments? Go ahead, Harry.
I had a quick question. So I know that for land trails, that DOT alternative transportation money is a place where trail organizations are trying to get money in a significant way. Is there an equivalent logical place where, if we were putting together this connectivity plan for water trails in the basin, does any particular federal agency or bill that comes through Congress routinely strike you as a place we ought to be paying attention or trying to work?
Not that I know of. And I mean, Harry, something else you said was, in reality, the Water Trails program is the poor stepchild, or the whatever, to land trails. Land trails, and this is us too. I mean, we push for millions and millions of dollars for land trails and try to get tens of thousands or a few 100,000 for water trails. So it's a big, water trails don't have the same attention, probably for all kinds of reasons. The water trails don't have the same attention that land trails get. And I think that's going to be a long uphill piece, because you're looking at the land trails work for walkability, they work for public health, they work for access in distressed communities, they work for all these things that everybody's pushing for. And the fact that you need something else to use the water trail. I mean, you've got to make an investment, is a tougher piece, and that it doesn't always connect where people want to go. So it's a hard, it is a hard one.
So I was just on the call with the Appalachian Regional Commission earlier today, their transportation group. But one of the things we were talking about is typically they fund local grants. So for this group, if you got a local project, Appalachian Regional Commission working for the state or other places they work can make sense. But one of the things they said is that there are some multi-state funding opportunities that come out at the non-federal commissioner level. But you would clearly have to have quite a case to put together on that. I heard the connectivity, and I would think that the rest of the case would be the economic development case. And so now the fact that you got to buy a boat is no longer a detriment, it's a positive. The fact that we need outfitters is a positive. And so maybe that's federal money. Maybe that might be an outlet. It doesn't get to the whole Ohio River Basin, but it certainly gets to most of it doesn't get down to past Cincinnati, but it would take care of a lot of the upper part of the basin.
Well, with that, it's 1 hour, and we like to respect everyone's time. I'm just going to run through some of these other items that we were going to discuss pretty quickly. But you know, one of them is this vacant lock houses on the Kentucky River and the Ohio River, and there's the Army Corps has significant interest, and so I met with the Corps today, and so something's going to come out of that whole discussion, and we're going to meet this week and hopefully identify 5 lock houses that deserve immediate attention that could use some funds. Another topic that we were going to talk about was the National Park Service RTCA program. As I mentioned earlier, Harry and I met with them, and there's been 300 plus National Park Service community grants that over the past 20 years, and there's been no analysis of the success or how many more they could use. This is like a, you know, a very large project. You know, some of these two in Louisville are both about $12 million each. And so they're committed to doing a pretty strong analysis of what RTCA could do, should do for communities as they develop recreation. We also mentioned the Army Corps Recreation Gap Analysis. That plan for focusing from on the Ohio from Portsmouth down to West Point should be done by the end of September. And there hopefully will help us think about doing the exact same thing for the entire basin. One of the issues that has come up is the standard of how far apart public access pieces should be. And it turns out that it's dependent on the river, which just makes total sense. And so there's a little kink in that one. Then the Ohio River Recreation Trail is planning to, well, we're meeting with the Corps about a potential PAS project to help sort of think through this long-range planning process. You know, the 2 committee reports, I'm going to say thank you, Perry, for being on board, and we'll get to your committee report down the road, and the same thing with Greenways. The 3 updates, and Harry, can you cover these? Any overview of the congressional briefing and this orbit update?
I lost what I'm supposed to cover. I know it's legislative briefing.
Yeah, the congressional briefing and then the Mississippi River Commission orbit.
Okay, so the with Richard Harrison and Craig Butler had been working very closely with the co-chairs of the Ohio River Basin Congressional Caucus, Representative Yarmouth down in Louisville, Representative Bill Johnson in Southeast Ohio. Working through their staffs, they sent out an invitation to the legislators of the Ohio River Basin. And then we did a a briefing for those that showed up. The good news is they're working with us. The kind of disappointing news is we didn't have a lot of folks on that call. We had a pretty small number, but it gives us the opportunity to follow up with them. So we do have, we're trying to set meetings with both of the co-chairs, and we are looking to communicate back, providing the briefing that we did to the other chairs as well. So we're continuing to work very diligently to get our messages out to the legislators of the basin. Then the other is that David mentioned is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. There is a Mississippi River Commission that was established back in the early 1800s to figure out what the needs are of the rivers. And so this year, the the Mississippi River Commission is having an Ohio River Basin inspection tour. It was to be live. It has now gone virtual. But the good news is they have worked, the decisions all are made by the Corps of Engineers, but they have gotten a lot of input from Orbit on this. And so we actually will have 7 presentations at the Orbit. And it will have, it's a by invitation only group. It'll have a lot of legislators and those kind of folks there. And we will have 7 speakers, including on this call, both David and Richard, to talk about the priorities of the Ohio River Basin, how they dovetail with the Corps of Engineers, what we need from the Corps, and that kind of thing. So that's a quick update on those. You're muted, David.
In essence, the September 15th recreation piece will just review our goals and objectives, and talking with several folks, they say be bold and lay out your goals. So we are planning that. My deadline for the presentation is, I think, September 9th. I have to get it to Harry and the Corps folks. So I look forward to working with everybody here to sort of clearly articulate, this is not the ask, this is the why, what we really want to do, and we don't have to have exact budgets ready for it. Besides that, short meeting. Commissioner Waddell, thank you very much for joining us. Are there any final comments?
Victor brought up a really good point. Harry, I took the liberty of answering. The summit is going to be virtual. Oh, yeah. The Orbit Summit in October is going to be virtual. We're still working on the details. Is that fair, Harry?
From what I understand, both the Orba and the OrbCray is going to be virtual. We were going to take the Kentucky State Fair exhibit up to Thomas More and have it there for 2 weeks, and we also postponed that. So both are virtual. We have several recreation presentations there. From my understanding, Risa and David are doing one. We're doing one on the lock houses, John Stroughton and I. And I think the Corps is doing one on the public access presentation they're doing. So stay tuned. We'll share more information. Now on September 26th, so we can think about the Army Corps of Engineers lake projects. They have 17 lakes with like 4 park managers at each lake. I talked with a guy today who's over all of it, and he said he just doesn't understand why he doesn't have that many managers on the river as well. So who knows? But there are reasons, but that's our next presentation. Thank you very much. Stay in touch, do good work, and don't forget, everything we do is by committee, so stay involved with your committee and produce good ideas.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, David.